The coaching habit. Say less, ask more and change the way you lead forever. Author, Michael Bungay-Stanier. Part 3. Should you ask rhetorical questions? When Marlon Brando, his godfather cheeks full of cotton wool, made someone an OER he couldn't refuse, it meant he'd wake up with a horse's head at the bottom of his bed. You, of course, are a little more subtle about trying to get your way. You've taken on board that it's better for everyone if you give a little less advice and ask a few more questions. At the same time, in your heart you're pretty sure you know the answer to the problem being discussed. So, you've mastered the fake question. Have you thought of? What about? Did you consider? Stop offering up advice with a question mark attached. That doesn't count as asking a question. If you've got an idea, wait, ask, and what else, and you'll often end that the person comes up with that very idea that's burning a hole in your brain. And if she doesn't, then OER your idea as an idea, not disguised as a fake question. Here's your new habit. I've got the answer, which I want to suggest. Asking a fake question such as have you thought of, or what about, which is just advice with a question mark attached. I will ask one of the 7 essential questions. And if I want to present an idea, I'll offer it up as an option, rather than a question. 3. The focus question, in which you find out how to stop spending so much time and effort solving the wrong problem. Eureka. Kind of. The world of science is full of accidental, brilliant discoveries. William Perkin was trying to cure malaria and ended up creating the RST synthetic dye, morphine. Andrew Fleming failed to tidy up his lab properly before heading on vacation, and on his return, found our RST antibiotic, penicillin. The post-it note owes its success to a failed superglue. Viagra was originally created to deal with angina. Sadly, this synchronicity is not what happens in your organization. If your organizational culture is like every organizational culture I've ever seen, and it is, then it's a place that loves getting things done, making it happen, crossing it over the to-do list. And if you're like most of the managers I've ever worked with and for, and, for that matter, being, then you genuinely do want to figure it out. The challenge is that with the years of conditioning you've had, as soon as you start hearing what a doctor might call the presenting challenge, every fiber of your body is twitching with a desire to exit, solve it, OER a solution to it. It's Pavlovian. Which is why people in organizations, like yours around the world, are working very hard and coming up with decent solutions to problems that just don't matter, and why the real challenges often go unaddressed. When people start talking to you about the challenge at hand, what's essential to remember is that what they're laying out for you is rarely the actual problem. And when you start jumping into X things go over the rails in 3 ways. You work on the wrong problem, you do the work your team should be doing, and the work doesn't get done. You're solving the wrong problem. You might have come up with a brilliant way to X the challenge your team is talking about. However, the challenge they're talking about is most likely not the real challenge that needs to be sorted out. They could be describing any number of things, a symptom, a secondary issue, a ghost of a previous problem which is comfortably familiar, often even a half-baked solution to an unarticulated issue. Every fiber of your body is twitching with a desire to fix it, solve it, offer a solution to it. You're solving the problem yourself. Your team has trained you well to do their work for them. Anytime there's a problem, rather than trying to figure it out themselves, they now come to you for the answer. It feels, at times at least, as if it's easier that way for you and for them, but you may also be noticing that sense of overwhelm that comes from having to do your own job and some of the jobs of the others on your team. If you were in a therapist's house, at this stage the therapist would nod her head sagely and mutter codependent. You're not solving the problem. It's not like you don't have your own work to do. And now you've found yourself responsible for solving everyone else's problems too. And perhaps you don't actually have the answer to hand, so you ignore that email, or you put it back in your in tray, or you make a vague promise about providing an answer in the near, but not too near, future. Suddenly you're stopping progress. Not only is the team overly dependent on you, but now you're feeling overwhelmed, and you're slowing everything and everyone down. You've become the VP of bottlenecking. You need a way to manage the temptation to jump into crossing that opening challenge. You need to stop yourself and your team from getting entangled in the RST problem that's put on the table. Slow down just a little and you'll get to the heart of the issue. And here's a question that makes all the difference. The focus question. What's the real challenge here for you? This is a question that will help slow down the rush to action, so you spend time solving the real problem, not just the RST problem. It's no accident that it's phrased the way it is. Here's how it builds to become such a useful question. What's the challenge? Curiosity is taking you in the right direction, but phrased like this, the question is too vague. It will most likely generate either an obvious answer or a somewhat abstract answer, or a combination of the two, neither of which is typically helpful. What's the real challenge here? Implied here is that there are a number of challenges to choose from, and you have to find the one that matters most. Phrased like this, the question will always slow people down and make them think more deeply. What's the real challenge here for you? It's too easy for people to pontificate about the high level or abstract challenges in a situation. The for you is what pins the question to the person you're talking to. It keeps the question personal and makes the person you're talking to wrestle with her struggle and what she needs to figure out. Focus on the real problem, not the first problem. How the focus question cuts through the fog. Now that you know how the focus question is constructed, you'll see how it can cut through some of the well-practiced but inactive patterns that show up between you and the person you're coaching. These are the patterns that keep things misty and vague when you're trying to bring the challenge into focus. At Box of Crayons, we call them the foggy bears, and we call the three most common ones the proliferation of challenges, coaching the ghost, and abstractions and generalizations. Proliferation of challenges. You've mastered the RST of the 7 essential questions. You lean confidently in. So, you ask, what's on your mind? It comes tumbling out. There's the website project. We've only been going for 3 weeks, and we are already a month behind. And Alberto's acting up again, confusing radio silence for communication. We can't get any response from marketing about the launch, and I'm anxious about the budget for Project Tropic Thunder. And when I was driving in today, my engine started making this weird tock 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 sound. Now, if you've ever seen someone playing the Australian Aboriginal instrument called the didgeridoo, you'll realize that the musician has an extraordinary ability to keep blowing out air without seeming to ever take a breath. Circular breathing means he can inhale through his nose while exhaling through his mouth. Try it. It feels impossible to do, but clearly not for this person. What's on your mind has unleashed a seemingly unending stream of things he's worried about. You may also have mastered the second of the 7 essential questions, but there's no way you're going to ask and what else at this stage. You're already overwhelmed. With every problem listed, you feel a little uptick of anxiety and satisfaction. Because with this many problems, you're clearly in a position to help out in so many ways with a rich plethora of advice. The only question is where to start, with the RST challenge mentioned, or with the one for which you're most confident about providing the answer. Or here's your new habit: none of the above. Instead of moving into advice giving, solution providing mode, you ask the focus question. What's the real challenge here for you? Without a good question, a good answer has no place to go. Clayton Christensen. Symptoms of proliferation of challenges. Have you ever made popcorn? One pop, then another, and then the popping goes crazy. Problems proliferate in the same way. Solution to proliferation of challenges: resist the temptation to do the work and to pick one of the many challenges as the starting point, even though, no doubt, you'll have an opinion on which one it should be. Instead, ask something like this: if you had to pick one of these to focus on, which one here would be the real challenge for you? Coaching the ghost. What, you say with genuine curiosity, is on your mind? John. He's a nightmare. Never before have I met someone who suffers more acutely from SOS, shiny object syndrome. He's so scattered that it's like working with confetti. What? No. Tell me more, you encourage. And that's just the start of it. He has a very slippery relationship with truth and reality. It's not that he's lying exactly. It's just that the boundary between truth and not truth well, there isn't one. OMG. And what else? Did I tell you about the time when he... And so, it goes. A solid 40 minutes talking about John. And no doubt it's a thoroughly entertaining conversation, at the end of which you both feel much better thanks to your inherent superiority over John and all his many ors. And you feel like you've done some good coaching, because not only were you actively listening the whole time, but you also bonded deeply. This, however, is not coaching or managing. It's gossiping. Or, more bluntly, bitching and moaning. The key thing to know here is that you can coach only the person in front of you. As tempting as it is to talk about a third point, most commonly another person, but it can also be a project or a situation. You need to uncover the challenge for the person to whom you're talking. So, in the example above, it becomes a coaching conversation when it's a conversation about how this person is managing John, not a conversation about John. And asking the focus question, so what's the real challenge here for you, will get you there. Symptoms of coaching the ghost: they are talking on and on about another person, complaining about the boss, going on about a customer interaction, worrying about someone on the team, or perhaps a project or a situation, complaining about the new processes, going on about the project creep, worrying about the impact of the business unit reorganization. Solution to coaching the ghost: bring the focus back to the person you're talking to. Acknowledge what's going on and ask the focus question. It will sound something like this: I think I understand some of what's going on with, insert name of the person or the situation. What's the real challenge here for you? Abstractions and generalizations you plunge in. So, what's on your mind? I'm glad you asked. I don't know if you read the latest HBR blog post on this, but there's some interesting thoughts about the battle between strategy and culture. And I know this is something we are looking at as part of the project, and that the senior team is considering. You nod. Sure, she'll get to the point soon. Now, I think in general, the challenge with culture change is that there's a difference between what the leaders experience and what the rest of us experience. I heard it called the marathon eat, which means the leadership crosses the line and nishes the race before everyone else. Edgar Sheen has some interesting things to say about it in his book Your Heart Sinks a Little. Maybe she's never going to get to the point. It's not that this type of conversation isn't interesting, because quite often it is. It can feel more like a slightly academic discussion or an executive summary of what's going on. What's entirely unclear is how it is ever going to turn into one in which a problem gets identified and solved. This is the time you need to ask the focus question. So what's the real challenge here for you? Symptoms of abstractions and generalizations: you're in the midst of a big picture, high-level conversation about what's going on. It's almost as if the person talking isn't involved in it herself, but is an observer. Quite often there's talk about us and we, but there's no talk of me and I. Solution to abstractions and generalizations: if you feel yourself drifting, you need to find a way to ground the challenge and connect it to the person you're talking to. Just as with coaching the ghost, it's about bringing the focus back to the person at hand. To do that, you'd ask something like this: I have a sense of the overall challenge. What's the real challenge here for you? Moving from performance to development. In the Kickstart question chapter, I touched briefly on the difference between coaching for performance and coaching for development. Coaching for performance is the label typically applied to everyday solving the problem management. Coaching for development goes beyond just solving the problem and shifts the focus to the person who's trying to solve the problem. As I said, it's the difference between the and the person who's trying to put out the fire. The simple act of adding for you to the end of as many questions as possible is an everyday technique for making conversations more development than performance oriented. Yes, the problems still get sorted out, but with for you, there's often additional personal insight, and with personal insight comes increased growth and capability. 3 strategies to make this question work for you. Now that you know why the focus question works so well, here are a few tips to ensure that it works well for you. Trust that you're being useful. When you start shifting your behavior from giving advice and providing solutions to asking questions, you will feel anxious. I'm just asking questions. They're going to see right through this any minute now. Learn to recognize the moment when you ask the question and there's a pause, a heartbeat of silence, when you can see the person actually thinking and gearing out the answer. You can almost see new neural connections being made. To further reassure yourself, master the last of the 7 essential questions: what was most useful here for you, so you create a learning moment for the person and for you. Remember that there is a place for your advice when someone pops his head around the door and asks, "Do you know where the folder is?" Tell him where the folder is. Don't ask, "What's the real challenge here for you?" That's just annoying. Although the upside might be that people stop interrupting you, so don't dismiss this tactic out of hand. One of your roles as a manager and a leader is to have answers. We are just trying to slow down the rush to this role as your default behavior. Remember the second question someone once said, that everything tastes better with bacon. As a fallen vegetarian, I can attest to that. Equally, every question gets better when you add, "And what else?" asking, "What's the real challenge here for you?" But adding, "And what else?" What else is a real challenge here for you? Even better, build your new habit here. Write out the moment, the person and perhaps the feelings that are your trigger. The pattern we are breaking here is overworking the wrong problem, so the trigger is any time you start to focus on a particular challenge. Coming up with ways to X things feels more comfortable than sitting in the ambiguity of trying to figure out the challenge, but that's where the power of this question lies. So the trigger could be when your team is discussing a challenge or a project and the conversation has already moved to solutions, or when someone on your team is wrestling with a problem, but you're not really sure if he knows what the challenge is, or when you're feeling scared or anxious or uncertain about a challenge you're facing. Instead of write out the old habit you want to stop doing, be specific. The foggies are the old habits you're trying to break. So the instead of here might be when you decide that the RST challenge probably is the challenge, or when you leave the challenge a little high level and abstract, so people kinda know what it is, or so you assume, or when there are lots of challenges, and you're trying to X them all, or they all seem equally important, or when the problem is someone else's problem, or just someone else, or when you spend no time on focusing on what the challenge truly is, and move right to actions. I will describe your new habit. I'm pretty sure it will be, ask back quote what's the real challenge here for you? Watch it work. Watch the short videos at thecoachinghabit.com/videos to deepen your learning and help turn insight into action. How to help your team find focus. You'll find a number of questions and tools you can use to help your team find the focus they need to do more great work. When we set our researcher, Lindsay, onto the science behind this question, she came up with any number of studies on the value of helping people narrow their focus. You may remember me mentioning Barry Schwartz's The Paradox of Choice in a previous chapter, and there are multiple studies that show how limiting choices reduces overwhelm and polytonicity, a fancy word for multitasking. But there's more to this question than just providing the focus that will liberate creativity and unfreeze procrastination. Part of what makes the focus question work so well are those two NaNL words, for you. A 1997 study involving a fairly convoluted series of math problems focused on the impact of having the word you as part of math problems description. The researchers found that when the word you was present, the questions needed to be repeated fewer times, and the problems were solved in a shorter amount of time, and with more accuracy. You can take this insight and add it to all of the questions you ask people. Adding for you to a question helps people figure out the answers faster and more accurately. If you enjoyed this audiobook and want to hear again, be sure to click that subscribe button and click also the notification bell to switch between getting all notifications, and like and share. Leave your comment and suggestion below. Thanks for watching.